My granddad, Meyer Schaffer, in 1923, he somehow didn't get the news of Doroteo Aranjo, better known as Pancho Villa. He didn't get the news that Villa had been assassinated. And when the news caught up with him a few years later, Meyer had to close his luggage store on 7th Avenue in Manhattan and found himself walking up 7th Avenue, and without even thinking about it, he found himself saying the Kaddish, the Jewish prayer for the dead. And as he walked, Meyer remembered another walk in about 1915 when he walked across the bridge from Laredo, Texas to Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. You see, back then, Meyer was a salesman to the Everhart Trunk Company, and he had a territory that stretched from Texas to San Francisco. And he sold a lot of trunks that way. And he loved going to Laredo for two reasons. One, he'd spent part of his childhood in that border country, and he had an old childhood friend of his owned a saloon in Nuevo Laredo. So that night after Meyer was finished making his calls, he was looking forward to crossing that bridge, visiting his friend's saloon, and spending a few hours telling old stories, bringing each other up to date about their families. But when he got to the saloon, instead of the usual boisterous place, it was quiet and pretty much deserted. And his friend, the saloon keeper, told him that Pancho Villa and his army, this motley collection of farmeros, ruffians, rodeo cowboys, Indians, even some North Americans, was in the area, and the Nuevo Laredo folks were keeping their heads down until that storm passed. And his friend told him that Villa had come to the saloon several times, might indeed come this very evening. And if he did, Villa liked the place to himself. And who was going to argue with him? And if he did come in, Meyer was to stay quiet and invisible. Okay, well, sure enough, shortly after, they hear the clatter of horses coming. They hear the sound, the roar of a powerful automobile. And then the automobile engine dies or is cut off. And now they're hearing boots on a wooden sidewalk. They're hearing the creak of leather, the clink of metal. Voices loud and boisterous. And the saloon doors swing open, and in come two tall, rifle-toting Indians who check the place out, and one of them sticks his head back outside in the street, says something to somebody, and the door bursts open again, and a group of tough-looking men come in, and they're all festooned with guns and knives and bandoliers full of ammunition. And they sort of stand at attention as a short, stocky man comes in, wearing a huge white sombrero that doesn't dwarf his face. It seems to frame it. And he's got wide, big mustaches that frame this mouth that could just as easily smile or snarl or sneer at you. And as the Indian guys with the rifles stand guard, the rest of the group sits down at a table, and they're quickly served pitchers of beer and platters of sausages, and they're all talking excitedly, and Meyer is sitting in his corner of the bar practicing invisibility. And in the lull, during a lull in the conversation, Pancho Villa looks up and sees my grandpa sitting in the corner of the bar, and he says something to one of his lieutenants, and the man gets up and comes over to Meyer. Now, Meyer Schaffer was a short, stocky guy. He about the same size and build as Pancho Villa. In fact, Meyer thought they could wear each other's clothes. The emissary comes up to him, and Meyer thinking, what's going to happen now? Meyer was tough. He was as tough as Pancho Villa. He was a fighter. In the States, he didn't put up with any of the anti-Semitism that was then so prevalent in the country. He was quick with his fists. He was quick with his mouth. But this group of armed men would be something else, but he was ready. But the emissary speaks to him in good English and says that the general would love to have a drink with this gringo. Would he mind coming over and joining them? Well, he does, and they're talking, and somehow in the conversation, maybe my grandpa lets on that he's Jewish. Or maybe Pancho Villa figures it out for himself. I don't know, I wasn't there. In any case, Villa springs up out of his chair, knocks off my grandpa's derby hat, takes his hands and runs them through my grandpa's curly, thick hair. And he's snarling at my grandpa, you Jew devil, baby killer. The priests have told us that all you Jews carry the devil's horns. And Meyer is coming up out of his chair, his fists are clenched for a fight, but when he hears that, he just falls back in his chair. Baby killer, horns. But these old mendacities never end. And the two men now are glaring at each other. And the glare stretches out for a minute or maybe more. It seemed like a long time. And then they're looking at each other and really looking in each other's eyes. And Villa laughs suddenly, and they go back to the conversation. And they talk. They talk into the wee small hours of the morning. What they talked about, I don't know for sure. Again, I wasn't there. I've just heard fragments of the story. Maybe, my guess is, they talked about their lives. They talked about their hopes and dreams. They talked about their families, their children. My grandpa's 2 children, Villa's dozens. They shared, maybe, their common love of baseball and U.S. movies and their common hatred of injustice. I just imagine these 2 small giants bonding and joining their dreams over that scarred table. The next morning, Meyer has to get back on the train and go out to California. Eventually, he makes his way back to New York City, where he becomes the proud owner of this luggage shop. Pancho Villa, he goes on with his good fight. He raids Columbus, New Mexico, the last time a foreign general successfully invaded the United States. He keeps fighting until maybe 1920, when he retires to his hacienda and has 3 good, peaceful years until that bloody afternoon in Parral City where he's assassinated. About 50 years later, my wife and I have bought a little house in a little village on the edge of Richmond, Virginia. We were in a hurry. We had to get out of the place we were at. We needed a place that was affordable, a place we could get a mortgage. We didn't check it out very well. It was a cute little house. We move in and discover we are in a neighborhood where practically everybody is either in the KKK or the White Citizens Council. Almost every house on our block is covered with KKK posters or George Wallace posters. And I'm realizing, like my grandfather in that saloon, I have practice invisibility, which worked for a while, until we got invited to a July 4th neighborhood kind of block party. And it went well until my next door neighbor discovered I was Jewish. And now he wants to put his hands through my hair. What had changed in 50 years? Nothing. Nothing had changed. And now, as I think about my children and my grandchildren my great-grandchildren, when they face their moment with some anti-Semitic fool, at least they will know that they have Grandpa Schaffer and Pancho Villa covering their backs. Thank you.